Also, I was thinking, we could actually like challenge run this podcast episode. If I say or we just reset and start over again.
Oh, no. No.
Good luck.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break, a podcast that features conversations with speedrunners, developers, content creators, and everything in between. This is episode 78, Slackanater, here live. Hey, Slackanater, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for doing this. This is a ton of fun. Probably late night for you. I know I'll stream a lot of times in the morning, so hopefully you're awake and everything like that. I'm not keeping you up too
It is.
late.
I grabbed a cup of coffee for the stream. I do cherish these moments at night. My kids, I have 3 young kids. My kids are up super early, and we are a very madhouse for a while. Once they go to sleep, my wife puts a show on. I get a little bit of time. So to sit back, relax, have some coffee. I'm looking forward to it.
I know the feeling. So that's perfect. Perfect segue. Let's start. When did you? So I noticed, most of the games and the things that you play and stuff are NES and retro 8-bit. That's kind of, I've noticed you play a lot of those types of games. When did you start gaming, and what are some like your early memories with video games?
Oh man. So my early memories are definitely me being the youngest child. I had an older sister, but she was 15 years older than I was. I was the youngest, and she was the other end of the scale. But I had 3 older brothers. So my memories of video games was like waiting for my older brothers to quit so that I could play. So I spent a lot of time watching. And I grew up with a Nintendo, a Super Nintendo. We didn't ever get a 64, but my neighbor had one. I played a lot. And then I moved into PlayStation and beyond. But I remember those early years. Watching my brothers play, fighting for a chance to play, but ended up having to wait until they were like, yeah, we're done. They'd throw the controller at me, and then they would leave, and I would sit there by myself and play. So, I played a lot of the NES. I grew up on a dairy farm in Pennsylvania, so we didn't have a lot of games. My dad called the Nintendo the damn Nintendo. Get off the damn Nintendo. So it wasn't like I know a lot of my friends now that are into retro games or collecting and stuff. They're like, oh, I had this game, this game. We had like 7 games, maybe. And then on the Super Nintendo, maybe I had 2 or 3. It wasn't until later in life that I got back into the retro games. And then I took modern gaming to like the 360. And then I don't know what happened. I really don't. I've had this conversation with a couple people, but like modern gaming got to the point where it felt like I was like renting a movie. Like you'd go to the store, you'd buy a new game for like $60. You'd go home in like 4 hours, you played it, and it's like, I'm done with that. It didn't have what I get out of the retro games now, which is that the nostalgia, but also that we're going to talk about challenge runs and stuff, but that extended playability because of all of the things that we can do with that game. But anyways, there's a little start.
I think it's come up a lot for folks who grew up with these consoles, 8 and 16-bit generation, that quite often you played like what you had, and we've talked about renting games and stuff like that back in the old days. I had 2 brothers myself, and I hope we didn't exclude my younger brother. I'm the middle one, and I'm worried about like, oh man, did we? But you did,
I'm sure. As the youngest, you did for sure.
Well, on the flip side of that, I know in our house, like none of us could beat any games. So at some point we're going to have to ask each other for help. And we were pretty close in age, about a year and a half apart each. So, but then again, we probably played it and then maybe he got seconds. I'm not worried about it. I'm going to call him up and ask.
Similar here. We didn't really beat a whole lot of games. We did rent some games, and there was some repeat rentals and stuff, but a little difference. The age difference was much bigger in my family. Like my oldest brother was 10 years older than I was, and then it was like 5 and 3. So with that bigger gap, they didn't want to hang out with their little brother who was, 5-6 years younger. Or whatever, so.
Totally. Are there any games that you remember specifically that like kind of like captured you, or games that you wanted to keep exploring or play and, again and again type of thing back then? Or that come later
Z2 is, I was going to say Z2 is going to be a game that I will play until I am too old to play games. And that game was one that I remember playing a lot as a kid. Another one I remember playing, it was one of the ones we owned, was Faxanadu, which is a little hidden gem on the NES. Great that game is really, really good. And we had Rygar as well, which I was playing today on stream. But Rygar is another game that we had. Those three, we had Double Dragon as well. Those are 4 games that I played a lot on stream, but those are 4 of the games that I am sure that we had. We didn't have the original Zelda. We had Zelda 2. But I know we had those 4 games. I remember distinctly playing those games a lot. And I think that's why they appeal to me so much now when it comes to either the challenge runs or speed running and stuff. It's just because they house most of the memories. Kung Fu was the other one as well. Yeah. Oh man, I played Kung Fu was the only game as a kid I could beat. The only game I could guarantee getting to the end was Kung Fu. But yeah, that was definitely one of the ones I played a lot.
All class, love all 4 of those. Unfortunately, I didn't own Rygar. So Rygar was one of those ones that a friend had, and I only got to see glimpses and pieces of it when I'd go over to his house and stuff. But all great, great games that I think still all, by the way, hold up today, that they're super fun. The Zelda 2 thing we're going to get into a little bit, because one of the things I've noticed is that I don't think anybody ever quits Zelda 2. If you're into Zelda 2, like, you don't quit that game. It's something that stays with you for some reason.
You don't.
It's bizarre. So then how did that lead into, or when did you well, actually, let me start with this. So one of the things, obviously love to chalk challenge runs, because that's something that I love, that those have been around forever now, but still are getting the kind of, they seem to be, some of them are getting as popular as some of the speed runs, which I think is awesome, because they're just a fun new way. What came first for you? Challenge runs, speed runs? How'd you get into this type of thing?
It goes back to what we talked a little bit about, me having a little bit of time right now. This right now is the time that I had when my kids were even younger. I had my wife and I, similar to you said, your brothers were very close in age. My wife's family was very close in age and wanted to have our kids close. So we thought, okay, let's do it. And we had 1, 2, 3 boys in 3 years. Oh, wow. So when I had a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 3-year-old, my brain was getting melted. Like we were trying to work and keep up with the house, and we had these young kids, and eventually I needed a little bit of time. I hadn't played games in a long time. Like I hadn't played any video games really at all. So I broke out. I didn't even break out my old consoles. I loaded up a ROM or an emulator on my PC, and I started playing Zelda 2. And I started just playing back through the game, and it was distinctly, I can remember it just like it was yesterday. I watched a run. You're familiar with Lord of Ultima, Lordo from the Z2 community. I watched a run of Lordo. I think it was his 76 or 77 maybe. So this is like 4 years ago, and he was rewatching a run that he had did offline, but he was rewatching it and recording his commentary, which I had never really seen speedrunning or anything like that. But what I got to watch in that run was him explain everything that he was doing. And by watching it, I was going, I could do this. Like, he's telling me what to do. Why don't I try to do this? And that's where the seed was planted right there, was that run from Lordo. And actually, you'll see it if you ever join my streams, you'll see it carried on. I have a desire to show people what's going on, because it was that video of him showing what he was doing that allowed me to get into it. And it's been a game changer. It's been a life changer for me. So after watching that, I started looking into Zelda 2 speedruns and realizing I was going to have to record it to be able to show the run. And OBS is the software most people use. And when I loaded up OBS, I didn't have a lot of space on my PC, and looking into it, the record button is right there by the stream button. And if I streamed it, Twitch would record all the VODs, and I didn't have to store the video. So I started streaming instead of recording. I almost started streaming immediately, for saving space on my computer. And that's where it all started, with Zelda 2.
That is so cool. I got to say, I appreciate that that's something that's continued in the content. So I probably became familiar with you and your stream and all that kind of stuff around the Ninja Gaiden time. And because of the time you stream, I got a day job. So it's like I wasn't able to watch a lot of your streams. But anytime you'd put a video on YouTube, there'd usually be some sort of explanation or something, giving it some context and some information on what the hell was going on. And I've watched Summoning Saul's video. I know a little bit about Ninja Gaiden, and I've played it a little myself, but the controls are still just a complete mystery to me. I still struggle, which is the controls. But the fact that you were explaining some of the stuff, I really did appreciate that. And I'm glad you keep doing that even to this day, because it makes it so like you actually understand what the hell's going on when you see it, you know?
I have a little "the more you know" gif that I play on the stream, and I'll say, "The more you know." Now I can't think of how it goes. Because the more you know, the more fun you'll have while you're watching the stream. And I'll play that little gif. And it's absolutely true. Oh, yeah. I compare it to a magician. So if you see a magician, you want to be wowed by what the magician's doing, and you don't want to know how he does it, or at least not everyone wants to know. That's not the same in speedrunning. I feel it's more enjoyable because some of the unlike a magician, when they make a woman disappear, you go, holy shit, like that was cool. In a speedrun, you're taking damage, and sometimes it looks like you're doing something bad, or you could be doing an extremely difficult trick, and if the person doesn't know what you're doing, they can't value how difficult that was, or how important that was to the run, or how amazing that save was, because it's not as obvious as a magical trick. So that's why telling people what you're doing and how you're doing it, so then when you're doing attempts, they can watch and go, whoa, he pulled that off, or whatever. I really think it makes it more enjoyable for a viewer to watch a streamer when you have that context.
And I think that's one of the reasons why there are tons of reasons, but GDQ being so popular, I think one of the things that's captivating about it is you quite often you got this commentary going along, and you don't know if something's amazing, but you have some commentary. This is super hard. Who knows? Anything the game could just fall apart at this point, and then the speedrunner does it and makes it awesome.
That's a great comparison. Watch GDQ without the commentary and watch it with the commentary.
Totally.
And it's a huge difference. The commentary make it so much more fun because it gives you that perspective. It allows you to understand what's going on and appreciate that, especially when the commentators are talking about the history of the run and how it's been developed and stuff like that. It just makes it more entertaining. It really does.
Totally agree with that. Okay, so speedrunning came first, and Zelda 2. That's awesome. That's great. Did you pick? Which category did you start with when you were running Z2? Or you're still running Z2? But
this is great. This is great because I'm gonna do the whole thing when it comes to people that are new into speedrunning. So when I first found speedrunning, I looked at any percent, and I'm like, well, he's just glitching the game. That's not cool. So I went into all keys, cool. And that was I started with all keys. I worked at PB from like my first 1cc run was like 100 minutes, so an hour and a half, and then I worked to 90. And I think I worked it down to like an 83 or an 84 or something. And then I put it away and I moved on to Kung Fu, which was my another run. It was shorter and more precise. My problem was I could get one run of Zelda in a night.
Yes.
You just get one run. And I couldn't really reset very much. Now with Kung Fu, it's a 5-minute run. It's a 3-minute and 30-second run. Like I could get a lot of attempts. So I moved on to there. And it's fun how being in the community for 4 years now, because of what I know, I can appreciate glitches more. I'm an any percent runner. I love it. If we can break the game and we can come up with a glitch and we can do it, I want to beat the game as fast as possible. So I haven't ran all keys in probably a year. It's just neat how that transition happened, because at first glance, if you're a casual gamer and you play retro games casually, you're going to have that first look at an any percent run and go, you hear it, oh, he's cheating. He's using glitches. But once you start to appreciate it and you understand it, it is fascinating, the things that we do with games, and the ways that we can figure out how the glitches and work. And most of them are ridiculously hard to do. So if you understand them, you can appreciate that.
I'm going to give a quick shout out. I did a podcast episode a long time ago with Eon. So if you're curious about the different categories and a deep dive into Zelda 2, let me shout out that episode really quick. I'm really surprised how far the any percent run continues to be pushed. As the fan of the game and also somebody who's trying to learn the game at the same time, the game seems broke. Any percent has seemed broken for a long time. Like it seems like there's a lot going on already, and it continues yourself and many others like are continuing to grind this. What are some of, I guess let's first start with, what are some of the tricks or some of the things that were challenging or you needed to learn the any percent run? And then how has it kept evolving for you as you run the game now?
I'm so happy to have this conversation. I'm ready for this. So the main hurdle for any percent, and I think it's the thing that that turns a lot of people off, is you do need to perform the healer glitch, which is getting more popular. People are knowing more about it, but we basically want to access Glitch Town, and I will be very poor at explaining how the glitches work. I'm not going to, and it's a podcast, so I'm not going to try to do it, but we want to access Glitch Town. And what that town is it's just it's a default town in the game. It's not actually used in the game, but in the programming, they needed something there. So we want to access that. And from there, we can break the game in a number of different ways that allow us to skip parts of the game, allow us to break the way the game scrolls the screen and a lot of things. But to do that, we need to talk to the healer on 2 specific frames. So the NES runs at roughly 60 frames a second. So when we talk to the healer, we have to talk to the healer with the accuracy of 1/60th of a second. Twice in a row. So it's a really precise trick to do. But if you think about it, less about I have to try to hit that 1/60th of a second, and think about it from maybe a musician standpoint or something where you can learn the muscle memory of it. It's actually not as hard as you may think it is. It does take a really long time to build up the muscle memory, but once you do, now you're able to unlock the any percent, because without it, you can't do any percent. Like, you have to do that glitch. We're talking an all keys run of 1 hour and 20 minutes and an any percent run of, we're 15 minutes now. So if you're going to do it, you have to do that glitch. I think that's the hurdle that most people get hung up on. But once you get past that, what we've done in the last year or year and a half now is we basically used that glitch to develop, and this wasn't me, this is people before me, used that glitch to develop a run. And then over the last year and a half, we say, okay, well, we don't need that. We don't really have to have that. Well, attack 3 is nice, but how about attack 2? How about attack 1? Life 4 is, how about life 1? You know, it's like we started to eliminate all of the things that had to happen. So as you're developing the route, you make it so it's doable. And then once you do that and you get better, you start to pull those things away. And that's really what's happened. The main hang up in the run is Great Palace. We do a fairy scroll, screen scroll with the fairy that skips Thunderbird. So if you think about the progression of the game, to beat Thunderbird, you have to get the Thunder spell, right. And Thunderbird's really difficult, especially if you're at life 1 and attack 1. So there was a manipulation to get past Thunderbird, but we had to cast Fairy a couple times, and that bridge alone is why we would level the character up. And that was where I kind of got introduced to the game. A runner by the name of LSD Hippie 420, which if you have someone with that name giving you advice, just take it immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
But he came at me and said, hey, you know, we could do this faster if we could ever get the little spiky Mew guys on the bridge to cooperate. And that's where I started grinding, was starting to learn how the Mews operate and how we can manipulate that so we could use less magic. And that's where the run developed to the point where we only need 1 magic upgrade. So we finished the run with attack 1, life 1, and magic 2. So we've stripped it down to the absolute bare bones. And then we will insert Frosted Pears, a great buddy of mine, longtime viewer of the stream, who has, I think, uncovered some things in Zelda 2 that I think people tried to figure out, but he's got a way of figuring things out in the code. And Frosted Pears has found even new glitches inside of that healer glitch that continue to lower the time more and more. It's hard to explain on a podcast because you need like visual aids and stuff, but it's really amazing. He will go through that code over and over again. And I think he even writes bits of code, that will like, try something over and over again. So, the program will try this and then like offset it by a frame and try it. So 10,000 attempts. Oh my gosh. It's like something that a human could never do. We're at that point with Zelda 2 in breaking down how it works. So it's a very exciting time. And we do have some more potential for time saves.
I think that's one of the things I love the most about speedrunning is this community effort. If you have a community around your game, not all games do. So, but when you, and of all the Zeldas, Zelda 2 has one of the smaller communities, interestingly enough. But when you have different people trying, like some people are really interested in routing, some people are interested in trying the different leveling and how much that impacts what you're trying to do. And then this is what you get. This is the end result where now you as the end runner can try some new things and see if they work for you. And I just think that's so cool to see the evolution and that it's going to continue that way because people are going to continue trying these new things, And
it's this conundrum. Like, can we continue to take it farther? Every time a new strat is developed, we go, there it is. We did it. We broke it as much as it'll ever be broken. And then 6 months later, well, wait a minute. How about this? And it's like, we keep getting lower. We look at, SMB1, you look at Super Mario Brothers. Like, can that go lower? Or is someone we don't know. Is someone going to find that thing that takes it farther? I think SMB1's pretty much done, but we'll never know. So it's interesting to, like you said, as more people start to dig into the game, we continue to learn new things. But my mindset, is, when will we hit the end? Like, there is an end point, but I guess we'll never know if we're there, right?
Most folks that come on this podcast, including Tassers and all those kind of folks, just think that probably never, right? That like at some point you're going to find a new way. It's just kind of, I guess, the law of large numbers. At some point you're going to just find a new way to try something else. And,
but it's got to have an end somewhere. It has to.
That's what I thought, but what do I know?
Right, but it seems like we're always finding new stuff, which is it's what keeps it fresh. I have this question a lot. Asked if am I going to start running randomizers? Randomizers are really cool. Things are coming out with that, and I'm like, yeah, randomizers are a great way to add playability to game stuff. But I don't need that yet. Like, there's still stuff to do. So until I hit this wall where like there's nothing left to do in Z2, I probably won't do any randomizers because there's still so much stuff to do.
We'll talk the challenge runs in just a minute here, but has doing the damageless runs, has that impacted the speedrunning for you at all? Like, if there are things that cross over skill-wise?
Oh, for sure. Obviously there is the similar pressure. Speedrunning, you got the pressure being under the clock, where damageless, you've got the pressure of any hit ends the run, like any small mistake. But they've got I love them both in different ways. So when you think of speedrunning, it's the precision. It's just reset and continue to grind until that one run is there. But there's one thing that, when you do eventually get a record in speedrunning, it is a adrenaline rush like none other for me. But when you get that, someone's going to beat it.
Right.
And then you'll feel that pull back to the game. Totally. So it's great. I love that. But with damageless runs, the skill crossovers there, both of them are definitely learning a game, getting muscle memory and memorizing the game and playing very well. But where damageless, you're not under the time crunch. So if I want to pause the game and go, oh, okay, like you can do that. Like, you have that as a tool to just go, calm down a second, or read a question from the Twitch chat. So I like that side of it. I also like the fact that for a damageless run, when you do complete the run, check mark. It's done. You don't have to come back. Like someone's always going to beat your speed run and you need to come back with a damageless run. For me, it's personal accomplishment. So I did it. I can check that mark, and it has that feeling of completion that I never got from speedrunning, because speedrunning is so open-ended. Like we just said, we're constantly finding new things. But I would say one of my favorite parts about it is where a speedrunning route is set in stone. These are the things that we know are the fastest way to do something. A damageless route is whatever you want it to be. What makes it the easiest for you to do damageless, you can do that. You don't have to go fast. And I find some extremely fun manipulations and strategies for games that are slow and will never see a speed run, but can shine in a damageless run. And I love that because there's new things that we get to do, and you're not shackled by, well, this is the fastest, so that's what you have to learn. It's like, no, I want to do it this way because this is cool. Like this is a swaggy strat, but it's slow. But you can do that in a damageless run. So they're very, very different, and I find myself bouncing back and forth because of it's that motivation or the excitement. Like, what do I want to do at the time? Because they both definitely have their pros and cons.
It's so well said, and that's so interesting to see the crossover there. I had a couple of more speedrunning questions before we get into the damageless challenge runs. I guess number one, of the games that you speedrun, are there any that you want to continue to look into and grind like you have been with Zelda 2? Are there any other speedruns that are of interest to you like that? My first world record I got in a speedrun was Kung Fu. I would like to go back to Kung Fu because my record got broke. An interesting thing with me, I never lower my own records. I think it has to do with, we talked just a minute ago about how I do think there's an end. Like eventually we're going to hit that spot. You look at Super Mario Brothers and like, there's not a whole lot of action going on. So if I can lower a record, I've never actually lowered one of my own records. I let someone else come in. I'll move on to a different game. But Kung Fu, my record was broken. I'd really like to get back to that game. It's got some of my favorite skill sets. There's absolutely zero RNG. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. And I love it when a game does that. Everything is predictable. Very high precision as far as doing the tricks at the right time and actually performing is very high precision, but you don't have to worry about reacting to random things. Another good one we talked about, Double Dragon. That game I wish got a little bit more love when it come to a speed run. Right there with you. Because the speed run is good. It is. It is, but not very many people run it. I don't know if I'll go back to that. I'm trying to think. I feel like I'm leaving one out. I was playing Rygar today, but I still have the record for that game. Oh, Jaws is another really good one. If there's anybody listening right now that is thinking about doing a speed run of a game, Kung Fu or Jaws is a great game to start. They're very short, 3-4 minute long, and they're really, really fun. Jaws is another one of those ones that we have broken apart so thoroughly that there's no randomness anymore. Like you're just doing... It's like learning a choreographed dance. Right. And once you know all the choreography, you just repeat it and do everything perfect. When I get asked about learning speedruns, Jaws is almost, there's a couple of them I recommend. Jaws is one of them because it's usually you can learn it and even if you're just starting, you can get it under 5 and 10 minutes pretty quickly, you know, if you're just following. There's plenty of guides out there. That's one of the other things about it as well.
And the room for improvement is huge. So you can go with getting into Jaws. You can dip your toe in the water, so to speak, and play it casually, speedrunning it, where you're just kind of reacting to things and doing it as fast as possible, all the way up to the world record, which, like I said, is scripted. You do this at this time and this at this time. Everything reacts the same, and it's the fastest way. So you have a huge room for progression. And Kung Fu is a very similar way. Kung Fu, you can be sub 4 minutes with relatively easy strategies and then grind it from there, which makes it fun. I think a lot of people like to get into a game at a lower level and then be able to do that progression. I think it's less common for someone. When I first started, it was you dive into the game, you learn the world record strategies, and that's what you do. And now there's a lot more beginner tutorials where you can get a start at something, get a handle of it, and then progress your own personal best, which is not the way that I normally approached games. But I think it's a really fun way to do it.
You mentioned something earlier that I wanted to return to for just a moment, and that is that you, once you world record, you're going to put it down for whenever it gets broken again. And that's super interesting. I most recently watched your any percent run of Z2, and there is obviously some time left on the table. In fact, my heart breaks a little bit when you get into Grand Palace and you're in the brick breaking room, and I can't remember what it's called, but you know, that's where the swearing starts, and you can say, even say out loud something about, oh no, there's definitely a time loss there. So it's
absolutely.
And you're just okay with, like, I think that's an interesting approach. Has it prevented burnout, or maybe you have been burned out? I don't know. Do you still get burned out, or has it prevented the kind of burnout when something like that happens?
Maybe it has prevented. So one thing that's interesting about it is, and there's the one thing, because when I talk about it in the chat, I can appreciate anybody's approach to what we do. It's a fun hobby. It's we do it to make ourselves feel good and to be part of a community. So I always say, whatever you want to do and whatever makes you happy. Some people like to play one game and get really good at it. And if they're going to grind a record down, they grind a record down because that's what they want to do. For me, I play a bunch of games. So when I get a record, I can just easily move on to another game that I like to play. And not everyone has that maybe that time to learn different games and stuff like that. So for me, it does help with burning out on something. Also, I'm a bit of the, squirrel. Like I get sidetracked really easy. So being able to jump around, helps, but I think the thing that got me started on that was, when I first was playing Kung Fu, there was a runner who's done a lot of work in, Dragon Warrior, in Punch Out. His name's Ouija Wee. You don't see Ouija Wee much anymore, streaming or speedrunning, but he currently, or at the time, had the world record in Kung Fu. And then when I got it, he broke it, but didn't break it again until I got it. And then vice versa. And we traded that world record back and forth like 6 times. And the community got involved in it. And everybody would jump back and forth on the stream. And, oh, did you see he beat your record? Are you going back for it? That was freaking fun. Yeah. That was awesome. Because in the end, who really cares? Right. I've got a viewer in the stream that's like, he says, I like to go into the bar and sit down and tell the ladies, I have a world record in an NES game, according to one website. Huh? It's like, who cares? Right, so it's more fun. I mean, I care. I'm really proud of those things. But in the end, for me, it's more fun to have the community involved in the back and forth. I like to cheer people on. I love it when the records get broke. Because now I'm not upset when my record gets broke because I'm waiting for it to get broke so I can return to the game. So it takes and flips that idea on its head where I want to have the record all the time. No, I want to play the game. And when I get a record, I stop playing it. So I'm waiting for that opportunity to go back. But it works for me. It's not for everybody, but that's my approach.
But you bring up a really good point about the motivation too. I know often different folks need different things for motivation. And I hear all the time, oh man, the record got broke. It's a great motivation to get me back into it. And it's a fun thing. Like you're saying, it's not like, I want to be pissed off about it. No, I'm going to use that as motivation to go better.
And there are some people that do get upset.
Oh,
and there's a lot of people that put a lot of time into a record. So I hesitate to say like it's the right way, but because everybody is.
Good point.
Yeah. But for me, it's definitely what works.
That is so cool. Awesome. Okay. So that's great. Are there any games that you would like to consider as a speedrun that you haven't quite got to yet or anything like that?
There's so many. I would like to get into, actually back to the games that I want to return to. I want to return to Ninja Gaiden. Oh, yeah. Ninja Gaiden was, I only played it. I used to do a 90-day challenge. I would see how good I could get at a game in 90 days. And Ninja Gaiden was the first 90-day challenge, and I got a 12:08, and I want to get the sub 12 in that game. So that's one I would return to. But there's so many games that I would like to learn, but it really comes down to time. Right. I'm enjoying the damageless challenges in games, and I like to follow the passion, like what is really exciting to me. So I feel like I'll probably not be learning a lot of speed runs in the next up and coming years, because I'll be trying to do some of these other challenges. Zelda 1 is definitely a game that just looks like I want to play that game. Contra. Contra is another game that I want to play. In fact, it's one of the next damageless games I want to run. But again, damageless and speedrunning, though, are similar. Like the speedrun is damageless, but that's not what I'm going to learn for damageless, because it's going to be way too hard. I like to make the damageless runs as easy as possible. Because I've done maybe Double Dragon 3, because I've done 1 and 2. Yeah. It's a very different game from the rest of the series. I've seen some runs of it, but that may be one that I would like to do. There is a bunch of them out there. I would probably speed runs for me tend to stay on the Nintendo. Mainly, I guess it was before we went live here, I was talking about my internet speed and living out in the middle of nowhere. One of the reasons why I do stream strictly retro is I can't do anything better than that, because my internet quality can't handle it. But for me, like speedrunning is, I like being able to open an NES game up in an emulator and look at the RAM and task it out and figure things out. And when you get farther in the games, when you get to Super Nintendo and 64, it's harder to do that, or at least I can't understand it as well. I have a lot of tools to solve the puzzles in NES games. So as far as speedrunning goes, I like to stay on that console.
Sounds awesome. I'm sure whatever it is going to be, I'm going to enjoy watching it. So I'm sure we'll see more PBs to come. You mentioned it, so let's get into it. What the hell was the first damageless challenge that you did? What exactly is it? I mean, I think we've talked about it a lot. And when did you first try?
Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja
Gaiden.
Was the first one. That was the one that started it all. Was doing a speed run of Ninja Gaiden, and someone in chat said, something about they brought up beating someone in chat brought up you can't beat Ninja Gaiden without taking without taking any damage. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, because of the demon's head. And that I was done with it. I'm like, okay, playing the game. And then someone said, well, you can kill the head. And I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. Like, how do you do that? And it was brought up by a couple people. And then next thing you know, there's a clip of Arcus killing the head. It was possible. And then I was like, wait, nobody has done this. And they're like, no, it's never been done. I'm like, but you're showing me that it's possible. They're like, yeah, but there's no way you're going to beat the entire game without taking any damage and then do that demon head kill at the end. And then that was hook. I was hooked right there. I'm like, well, yes, I will. Yeah, it's like, I will try to do that. So that was the first game and it was because it was not possible. That was the first game that I attached the damageless thing to. And then I started running other games without taking damage, and it was fun for all of the reasons that we talked about. It was fun for all these new reasons, and it's not something that a lot of people are doing. And I think it's for me as a Twitch streamer that I'm pushing towards making that my career. Entertainment is huge. And I think damageless runs are really entertaining. Speedrunning has done this, and I think it's kind of like tapering off. But I think damageless is kind of on the rise, and it's entertaining and fun. So unfortunately I didn't get a chance to watch the Ninja Gaiden grind live, but I have been able to watch a lot of the Zelda 2. And the precision, I shouldn't say precision, the way that you explore the game reminds me of the way a tasker explores the game. And the things that you are doing that is manipulating the RNG and finding new ways to make it as safe as possible has been absolutely fascinating. And I'm curious if that's something that's appealed to you, or is that just something you've learned to make sure you can do the run? Because I mentioned Zelda 2 a lot because I don't know if that's where you spend the most time in, but it's the one I've watched the most. And so it's been really interesting to see those finds. That Zelda 2 damageless was a year and a half. Like you've seen it a lot because it took us a long time to do it. Because that game, it's so unfair when you're starting out. Like, and I say it a lot. And this goes to your idea of breaking the games down. I want to make them as easy as possible. My goal is to not get better at the game. It's to make the game easier. In the end, when you've got to run like Zelda 2, that's 2 hours long, like we're humans, we make mistakes. So the more chances we have for mistakes, the less likely we are to finish the run. So I approach it that way, but I'm also very puzzle oriented. Like I like to see a puzzle and I like to try to solve it. So having some people, I mentioned Frosted Pears earlier. He has been, oh my gosh, he has been such a huge help when it comes to this because, I can send him a question and I get an answer like relatively quick. Like you're like, all right, well, for example, how do the bots work in Zelda 2? I wanted to know because in damageless, I want to go, you run this balance of, I want to go as fast as possible so that I can get as many attempts in as possible so that I can get to the end goal as quick as possible. But sometimes going slow will get you there faster. But the bots in Zelda 2 are so random. I'm like, is there any way we can, if they move this way or if they do this, like, is there any way that we can determine when we can jump and when things will be safe? And next, Pears goes, well, so the way that the bot works, and he starts to like dive into how this works. Every frame, the bot has a 1 in 128 chance to jump. And if it jumps, it will jump at you. Every frame, it's just deciding whether it's going to jump. It's a 1 in 128 chance. So that's not very good. No. He says on average, a bot will jump at you about every 3 seconds, but there's nothing stopping it from jumping at you 5 times in a row. It's like, that is completely random. There's nothing we can do with bots. You just can never trust them. But now we know that information, and we can use that. And neat things about it, like when they do jump at you, any of the other bots on the screen will also jump at you. And it's like, wow, I have noticed that when one jumps, they all tend to jump and they always jump at you, but they can move away and towards you. But when they jump, they come at you. So being able to have somebody that dives into, all right, here is the hard facts. This is how it works. And then I like to take that information and go, okay, where can we plug that in and how can we use that to our advantage? And that's what you see in the stream is the breakdowns, individual room breakdowns of, okay, this specific room, what can we do? I love that. I love it. There's nothing more satisfying than having a room that gives you a hard time and then finding a way to just own it. And there's nothing it can do. And you win. You've solved that little puzzle.
One of the, I think you took one hit. There was a run you did where you took one hit. I believe it was on some whiz robes. And I'm just curious, after grinding the game for that long, how soul crushing does that kind of stuff? Is that like losing the PB, at the boss fight? Like what is it? Walk us through some of those moments that have been just like soul crushing.
Oh my gosh. So in the Zelda 2 grind, I had 3 completed runs with only 1 hit. So it wasn't just the one. I had 3 completed runs. I had, oh my gosh, I think I had like 10 3-hit runs, a couple 2 hits. But I had 3 of them that were 1 hits. One of them was on a whiz robe, but there was one that's more famous. We called it the Heartbreak. I took and was damageless to Dark Link, and I hit Dark Link 7 out of 8 times and then got stabbed in the foot. I took the very last hit in the game. That kept me up at night. That one was hard. That one was one of, so there was so many layers to that. The chat, my chat is so much fun. And without my chat, I mean, every streamer is the same way. Without the chat, we can't do what we do. It's the generosity and the donations of chat that literally allow us to do the live streams. But they had put together this prize package for me. I don't have a Switch. but I've talked to my son about getting a Switch and stuff. So there was a Switch in like 12 games and people kept like putting things in if you can beat it by the end of the month. So I'm walking to Darklink going, I did it. I did it. I'm going to win. I'm going to do it. I was so excited. Darklink is a pattern. I know how to do it. I made a mistake. The last hit, I have to jump and stab him. And I did a standing stab and he hit me. It was completely my fault. I choked and it kept me up at night. Like 3-4 days, I would sit there at night going, you had it. You did it. You had it. I had to take a break from the game for a little bit. I think I went on to any percent runs for a little bit. I took a little break and then I came back. We got another one hit and we kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And finally it came through. One of the things that I am is I'm not a give upper, but I really like to see things through. But you're absolutely right. Some of those things are hard to swallow. It seems like every run I do, I at least end up with one run that I get one hit.
One of the fascinating things I've observed about the damageless choices as well is you haven't picked easy games. Zelda 2, a lot of the NES games are notoriously challenging, but Zelda 2, Castlevania 2, Ghosts and Goblins, I mean, these are not games that most people would consider like easy games to get through to begin with. Has that been part of it, or are these just games that appeal to you? Okay, go, you were saying, sorry.
I was say that was absolutely been part of it. As an entertainer, I want something that's eye-catching. Like I don't want to play an off like I've got a Legend of Kage here that I was doing some runs of and stuff like. I don't want to play a game that is less appealing. I want to play a game that people can relate to, and in the end, you want something for everyone to get excited about, and it's more exciting to beat a game that's really difficult. Part of it is personal gratification, revenge. I like to say it's revenge. Ninja Turtles on the NES. Yeah. That game was revenge. Oh, it's brutal. That game was brutal. So it was in my mind, like, I'm going to beat it without ever taking a hit. So
beat the
Ninja Turtles.
With
the damn. And then we made the damn game. The damn guessing game. Or what was it? But either way, we would come to that part of it, and everybody in the chat would guess how many times I would get hit in the dam, and we would do the damn damageless dam game. I think that's what we called it. But we like to make those things. But it's about that community, and that's where the games often come from as well, is suggestions. People, they don't want to see an easy game. They want to see me Battletoads. That's going to be one I'm doing soon. They want to see the games that are really hard to beat. And that's what's fun about it is we want a challenge, right. And, that leads to why we pick those games, why we pick the really hard games. I do have to weed some of them out. Some of them are, I don't want to say impossible because nothing's impossible, I guess, but some of them are really, it brings to mind Wizards and Warriors.
Oh, geez.
I looked through that game for thoughts about beating it damageless and the randomness of the enemies. I don't like when it's completely out of your control and you're just resetting over and over again. That's less fun. If it's something that's really difficult, but we can get good at it, sure. But that game's just full of randomly moving things. So there's some of them that I'm going to chalk up to being, maybe it's not that it's too difficult. It's just not fun. And there's that aspect of it we have to remember as well. At the end of the day, we're trying to have fun.
I was like throwing some wisdom out there for the folks. And if somebody wanted to try a challenge run, I know some of the first ones I did were like low percent of different games and stuff. That's a fun way to play through a game in a different way. What are some of the things maybe somebody should look for, or what, I guess, sparked your interest? How would you recommend somebody try out a damageless run, or what game should they, what's the first step?
Castlevania is a Castlevania because it's not, okay, I'm going to say this and I may get a little hate for it. It's not hard. It's not hard to do damageless. As long as you can, if you put it on an emulator on your computer and you can save state and you can practice individual parts, Castlevania plays very, forgiving if you memorize it. If you don't know where to go, Castlevania, you go to jump over a pit and a bat hits you or something like that. But once you memorize it, to play through it damageless is not particularly difficult, but it's on the very high end of the satisfaction. I beat Castlevania without taking a hit. It's noted to be a quite a difficult game, but knowledge is power in that game. So I steer people towards that. If they want something that's a little bit easier, and maybe not even damageless. I I talk about Kung Fu, do Kung Fu punch only, or just take away something from a game. We did Double Dragon headbutt only. Take away something from the game, limit yourself. Well, you talked about low percent.
Yeah.
That's also a fun way to do it. I often suggest for people, I get the question about speedruns as well. First thing to think about is what game do you love to play? And do that one first. Right. If you have that like desire to play it anyways, find a fun container to put it in, whether it be limiting the amount of time as a speed run, the damage, the weapons that you use, in a low percent, a pacifist run. Find a new and fun way to play the game that you already love before maybe reaching out to a game that you know nothing about, because at least in that case, you have that passion there already.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great advice. Great wisdom. I noticed that you've returned to Zelda 2 Damageless, having already completed the challenge. What the hell has brought you back to Zelda 2 Damageless?
Well, I am going to not be able to remember the name right now. I'd have to look it up. There was a bounty put on Zelda 2. So for anybody that's out there that wants to learn a ridiculously hard thing, you can make $2,000 if you can beat Zelda 2 100% completion. That means you're grabbing all of the keys, you're grabbing all of the health and magic squares, you're leveling your stats up to 888. You're also grabbing all of the spells. If you can do that, and all of the link dolls and all of the extra lives, if you can do that using the rule set from speedrun.com in 100% all keys, there is a $2,000 bounty. If you can do that and be the first one, you win $2,000. That has intrigued me. A little bit. You have my attention now. So it's a little bit different than the run that I did. So, for example, I don't get the shield spell. Like, there's no reason to go into Shield Town. It is just a waste of time for me to walk through the town, go into the house, and get the spell. So my run, I didn't get any of the health squares. Not that I couldn't get them. It just didn't, it would take time. I wasn't going to use them. So this takes my run and adds a lot of walking around. It does add some difficulty in certain spots, but it's going to add like 40 minutes to the run. It's going to add a lot of time. Some of the difficulty is, and from being familiar with all keys, we'll have to follow more of the all keys route. We do need to grab all the keys. When I did the run, I used fairy to get through doorways and stuff like that. So it's slightly different than mine, but my return is because someone's waving a bunch of money in the air. And I'm like, oh shit, money. Good. I like that. So that's bringing me back to the game.
It's another thing. It's interesting. I didn't even thought about this, but like, we've seen we've seen multiple bounties from different games over the last few years now. And I think it's kind of a cool way to incentivize things. Oftentimes it's the community getting together. Hey, I'll pitch in $10. I'll pitch in $20. Sometimes it's just one person putting up a prize. And what a cool way to just kind of like create some interest, especially I talk about Zelda 2 again because it feels like we're one of the smaller Zelda communities. So it's like, that's kind of a cool way to get people jazzed about playing the game and stuff. It made you return to
we were the offshoot. Like Zelda 2 was like, that's that Zelda game, so the community's a little smaller, but we are a very tight knit group and very passionate about that game. So yeah, it is nice to see some excitement. And I was super happy that when I did get the any% record, I got in contact with Carl Jobst. He made that any% video, was great. That got the run out there to more people. Because it is, I tell you what, I would challenge people to find better gameplay and combat than Zelda 2 on the NES. I don't think there's a Nintendo game out there that has the combat that Zelda 2 has. It is so good. It's hard. It takes some getting used to, but it's so good. You talked about Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden's terrible.
Oh God, it feels so.
Terrible.
I could not get my brain and fingers to communicate properly to play that game. I still to this day am frustrated with it.
You can get better at it. But when it comes to the fluid motion of Zelda 2 and the way that you can move through that game, once you understand, the acceleration and the stabbing and how the game works, it is such a pleasure to play. And I can't think of an equal. I cannot. Not on the NES for sure. I
can't remember where I read it, but you mentioned you didn't have a Switch, but Breath of the Wild's a game I've fallen in love with. I just think of the world of it. Mm-hmm. And they said one of the things that, one of the developers mentioned that Zelda 2 was one of the inspirations for Breath of the Wild in that the sword fighting, most people talked about the combat aspect of it, and they wanted to implement something like that in a modern video game. And that makes a lot of sense to me after playing it. It's one of the criticisms I hear quite often of Z2, and fairly so, is sometimes it feels like you get cheaped with your death quite a bit. You're bounced back into something, or there's a bat that hits you as you're jumping over a thing you couldn't see it. And I think those are all totally fair. But once you get past some of that and you learn the intricacies of the game, nothing feels better in the fingers, in my opinion. It feels so good when you're playing the game.
It's so good. Yeah. It's so good. But and whereas some other games, we talked about Ninja Gaiden, Castlevania, some of these other games where you get knocked back into things are way worse than Zelda 2. This is my shout out to people that want to try Zelda 2. This is where I think most people go wrong. Don't level up your life in Zelda 2, at least not at the very beginning. People go, I don't want to die. I'm going to level up my life. And what happens is you can last longer, but the enemies get harder and you can't kill them. So you have 3-4 enemies swarm you and then you end up dying. Start off by leveling attack. And then my key point towards the end of the game, in Zelda 2, you get a lot of spells. You become a magician at the end of the game. But what everybody does playing casually is they save their magic to fill up their life, and then they just fight everybody with their sword. You're a magician. You can turn into a fairy and fly over everybody. Instead, you fight them until you're almost dead, and you heal yourself and fight them until you're almost dead. Turn into a fairy and skip them. Or there's a spell called spell and turn them all into blobs. Like, we forget all of these things that we're taught playing the game, that you're really powerful in magic. I'm doing damageless A Link to the Past right now, and it's the same thing. Link to the Past, you get 3 different spells that wipe screens out. Like, I walked through that game. That game is so fun to play.
Oh yeah, it's great.
And once you get towards the end of the game where you've got, magic, you've got the cape, you've got jars of magic and those spells, walk into a room, light everybody on fire, disappear, walk around this guy. You're a freaking magician. People get hung up on just like healing themselves all the time. Use the spells.
That's such a good point. I didn't even thought about that, but how quickly we forget the mechanics that the game taught us,
Yeah, exactly.
These tools.
I've given you these tools and all of these spells, and there you are at you're in Great Palace and you're fighting these guys and your life's going down. Heal yourself. Fight, fight, fight. Heal yourself. Fight, fight, fight. Die. Oh, this game's too hard. Fly over them. Just fly by them.
I'm still very much learning Z2. My run's only down to about 90 minutes, but I'm actually doing the Famicom Disk System version. And it's interesting in that one because basically by Palace 1, you've got Attack 8. And it's been a really fun way to kind of learn like yourself from a while ago, I have very little time to speedrun. A lot of times I only have 2 to 3 hours to do it. So it's like, I get my I get to reset once or twice, and then I get my one run, and that's it.
And then you have to take it. Then you have to take that run.
But doing the Famicom Disk System version, it's actually helped me learn the mechanics of the game, of the combat specifically, because you're leveling up the attacks over then. Unfortunately, a lot of my runs end up dying because I get hit by something stupid and I wasn't paying attention, because my health is so low. But to your point, that's a great way to to approach the game. That don't be afraid to use those other tools the game gives you as you get towards the end of the game. Right? It's such a good point.
Well, I think people see the speedrunners as well that are so technically good at the combat that they'll kill everything with a sword, and they don't even take damage. Like they just go so fast, and that's really not the easiest way to do it. You know, there is easier ways to do it. Yes, you can get to that point, but like we said, the game teaches you these spells that can make the game a lot easier.
A really good point. And once again, just here's where you can use your own creativity. Approach the game, you know, the way you want to, and think of some things that, perhaps that you might not have thought of before. So really good point. If you don't mind me, I'm always curious about like the other side of the speedrunning aspect. And that's like, what do you do outside of this? And I noticed that as I was doing a little bit of research, avid hiker, and you used to create content. I don't know if you still do create content, but you had a YouTube channel and everything like that. Do you still get a chance to hike? And when did you become a hiker?
So, okay, so let's, this predates the kids in the retro. When I graduated, where I live, northwestern Pennsylvania is dairy farmers, Amish country. So I went from school to a lumber mill to a machine shop, and then I was a machinist for 10 years. Like I was doing that's what we do around here. You know, that's. You're
fitting my stereotype, by the way, of what you do in that part of the country.
That's what you do. You know, maybe so you're at a feed mill, work on a farm, drive tractor. I mean, that's what we do. But I had met my wife. She wasn't my wife at the time, but I've always had this dream of through hiking the Appalachian Trail. I don't know if you're familiar with the Appalachian Trail. It's a trail that starts in Georgia, and the trail system leads all the way up the East Coast, and it ends in Maine. It's 2,200 miles long, and it was a lifelong dream of mine to start at one end and hike all the way to the other side. And I got an opportunity to do that, but my job wouldn't let me leave. It takes about 6 months. You live in the woods for 6 months and you hike 20 miles a day. I loved being in the woods, and it's something that I really was wanting to do. So I quit my job. So I had worked at that shop for 10 years, and I ended up having to leave, and I went and lived in a tent for 5 months, and I walked up the East Coast from Georgia to Maine. And that's where the YouTube channel started. So the YouTube channel documents that journey from Georgia to Maine. And that's where I used to really like hiking. Growing up on a farm, I spent a lot of times in the woods. I did a lot of camping and stuff, but that's where my real love for hiking came into play, was that through hike. When I finished that, my wife and I were getting married, and then I lived in Philadelphia for a while she was going to school. I'm also a rock climber, so I was a rock climbing guide and a coach of a rock team in Philadelphia at the Philly Rock Gym. And then when we moved back home, I started doing some guided hikes, and I tried to continue the YouTube channel. I was doing tips and tricks for hiking, and I liked creating content for people. Like I liked that side of it. Didn't really care for the editing side of it. But then my wife and I went bam, 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 and had 3 kids, and the time was not there. Right. I did some videos with the kids and hiking with them on my back and stuff, but it became really difficult to keep up with that. So over time, I slowly stopped making videos, stopped posting anything when it came to the hiking. We still get out as a family, but anymore it was like, yeah, but I don't want to record while I'm out. Like I want to be out with the family and enjoy it. So it became something that I couldn't do moving forward. And it seemed like it just went hiking, faded out. And then I started playing games, and I just went on with that. And it became what I really needed, which was I was able to still entertain, create content, and I didn't have to edit anything. I go live. I do the live stream, and when I'm done, I press some buttons and I go in and hang out with the family. And for me, if anybody that knows what it's like to edit videos, it's so much work. And not that there's not a lot of work in live streaming, it's just a different kind of work. And it just fits my scenario a little better.
I made my living for 7 years editing, and it is a time consuming. It's the thing I love about it, is that the meticulous details you want to do and everything with it. On the flip side of it, it takes a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time.
Can't imagine doing
and
it
you
with
have to be
kids.
very good. You have to be very good. And over time, you get better at it. But even really talented people editing videos, it still takes them a while. And if you're not talented and you don't have decent equipment and a decent software, dude, you might as well spend 10 days. I had, I worked in, what was it? Pinnacle Studios, I think, is the software that I bought, and it just crashed all the time, and it was just so terrible. I'm glad I do some editing, but like today, we lowered the damageless record for Rygar today. So I do a quick edit of that. Like I take a little clip and put it at the beginning. I've got a pre-cut intro. I play the thing and I'm done. Like that's my extent of editing. I thrive on live streaming and being able to play and interact with chat. My days of editing are hopefully limited or done. I don't want to do it anymore.
I still freelance it. And the funny thing is as much as I do this professionally, I don't edit this podcast at all for that reason. I'm like, you know what? It's just too much damn time. I'm going to let it, you know, I'm just, what's the easiest way I can do this podcast and still actually do it like that.
And sometimes we almost have to do that too, though, you know, because you want to do it. And if you make it too much work, it never ends up happening.
Absolutely. That's cool that you still get a chance to do it like as you still get to be outdoors and do the hiking thing. As a person who I don't get a chance to do it very often, but man, my wife and I love going out and just finding, you know, just being out as we fortunately live in a neighborhood where I live in the suburbs, but at least we can get out and, you know, even just going around, walking around where we live is sometimes a great avenue to take a break from things. And I know those folks that are in the grind of a speedrunner or things like that, I always find it helpful or a good way to clear the brain sometimes where you just get outside, walk around a little bit.
Yeah. And walking is fantastic. There's something about, I never felt better than living in a tent, sleeping on the ground. Like I physically and mentally, I have never felt better than those 5 months walking through the mountains. It was amazing.
It blows my mind. And I got to tell you, I'm extremely jealous. This sounds like something I've really wanted to do. And I don't have any kids yet or anything like that. I don't know if I ever will, but it's something like I'd want to try. Did you have a cell phone and all that kind of stuff? Or is it just something that how do you live like that for 5 months?
It's tricky. And I've actually, I'm kind of a coach for people that do want to hike the trail. So I still get emails from people and I'm still part of the hiking community on the AT. In fact, I make a small replica at the very end of the trail. It's called Mount Katahdin. When you finish, you've literally been living in a tent for 5 months. You hike up the final mountain and there's a big sign and you stand on it and you put your hands up in the air and they take your picture. It's like you've won. Well, I make a replica of that sign and that's a little side job that I have, but it basically keeps me involved in the community. But when it comes to the trail, you do have some cell phone service and you are not loading 5 months of food in wagon cartons with you. So you normally pack for 3 to 5 days worth of food and supplies. Then you're going to hike for 3, 4, 5 days and make your way into a town where you resupply. And you're going to repeat that for 2,200 miles. You're just going to continue to do that. Around the Appalachian Trail, a lot of the towns have developed to be trail towns they work along with the hikers. A lot of stores carry a lot of hiking foods and stuff like that because hikers are coming through there. The Appalachian Trails, they've been, I think it's 50, 60, 70 years people have been hiking this trail, obviously more now. So as time's moved on, they've started to cater to the hikers. But oftentimes you don't have cell phone service. Oftentimes you are wet and cold and sleeping in a tent and dirty. And it's still a very outdoorsy thing, as well as it is a hiking trail. It's called a hiking trail, but it's on the ridge of the Appalachian Mountains. So there is a lot of mountain climbing involved as well. So you're not always just walking on a nice trail. Sometimes you are, but for the most part, it gets pretty nasty. Yeah, it is. It's quite an adventure. And I would suggest it 100% to anybody that would ever want to try something like that. It changed my life and it was an amazing thing to do. And I regret it zero. I would do it again if I could. So anybody out there that wants to do it should definitely look into it.
I love me video games, but man, just being away from unplugging for 5 months sounds absolutely appealing and just fantastic. Last thing I want to ask you about is because they've shown up on your stream a couple times, the kids and everything. Curious, have you shared any of these games with them? Like, are your kids, would they, I don't know if they're old enough to, but have they tried out like the NES era of games and did they enjoy it at all? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah. So this is my CRT that's on my desk. But there's the CRT that's in the house with the other Nintendo and the other Super Nintendo. One day on stream, my son came out and he said something like, Dad, I'm working through, he was working through, I can't remember now what part of Super Mario Bros. Or Super Mario World. And I was like, guys, I have to go. My son has a question about Nintendo. I will be right back. So absolutely. One of his favorites is he loves playing Mega Man because he likes the different robot bosses and stuff from Mega Man. Likes Mario Brothers. Playing a little bit of Link to the Past. So he likes a little bit of the Zelda. Cool. He just turned 6, so he doesn't have too much of an attention span, but he's here's the thing though, but he can play Minecraft and he can do just about anything in that game. But when it comes to, I think it's because of the limited technology or like the limited graphics and stuff. Right. The older games don't hold his attention quite as long, but he definitely still tries them. And, we do play together as well. We've done some like Double Dragon 2 playing and stuff, but
so cool. So there have been a couple of folks who've done the podcast who have kids, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised because a good game is a good game, but it's been kind of surprising to see how many kids actually do at least give it a chance. Like they'll try and play them, and sometimes they captivate, sometimes not. The Super Nintendo seems to be one that really resonates, and I think that might have something to do, like Minecraft. I really do think has impacted like everything. Having this retro style that seems, approachable and stuff like that, even though it's it's a much different type of game than a platformer is and everything. But that's so interesting,
it was Super Nintendo. I mean, they nailed it with that console. Not only are the games designed well, they control well, the graphics are good. Gosh, like beautiful. They ironed out all of the kinks in the NES, and then they made the Super Nintendo, which is, I will always be the NES guy. Like that'll always be my console. Super Nintendo's a better console. It is, but NES, that's my console. That's the one that I want to play. But objectively, the Super Nintendo's got a great set of games. They're well made. They play well. Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned it. Super Mario World is just a perfect example of how you can not have any sort of skills whatsoever and still enjoy that game, or you can be one of the best speedrunners that the community's ever seen and still enjoy that game, right? So it's like it just
absolutely
goes to show you. Well, thank you so much for taking this time. What's next for the stream? You mentioned some of them already. Anything you got planned for the next few weeks or anything like that?
So right now, the current grind is a Link to the Past. We want to try to get a damageless playthrough of that. My Jaws record is something that I'll probably go back for. Hey. That record was taken.
Yeah.
Kung Fu record was taken, so I'll probably go back for that sometime as far as speedrun goes. I would like to get back to Ninja Gaiden, but I do want to finish. I want to finish the Zelda, and then it's hard because there's a $2,000 bounty on Zelda 2. I feel like, but I just spent a year and a half of my life on that game. Like part of me is like, it's not worth the money right now because I just won. I don't need to go back, right. But I don't know. But there is a fun challenge that I am looking forward to doing at some point. I would like to make at least one challenge on the 64. I didn't play a lot of 64 growing up, but one thing I did play was GoldenEye. My neighbor had it. We played a lot of GoldenEye, and I'm always trying to do stupid hard challenges. So my goal is potentially to take GoldenEye and do the 00 agent. So the hardest difficulty, do no damage, headshots only. I think it would be so ridiculously hard because imagine, I shot him in the shoulder, reset. But to go through the entire game, only headshots, no damage. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. But that's something I'm looking at.
Nintendo 64 controller, so it's not like you have dual analog sticks or mouse and keyboard or anything like, oh my gosh, that sounds painful.
Yeah, I think it would be fun. I think it would be fun. Well, it depends too. We talked a little bit about the dissecting the game. Part of it is I like to find the puzzle and figure the puzzle out. If I got into that and it just turned out to be no fun, which it could be, then it wouldn't. Then maybe we wouldn't do it. That's some of the things we have going.
Sounds about on brand for you, by the way, too, with the find the really tough challenge run. Let's go for it.
Yep.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time and chatting some video games and staying up late. I really do appreciate it. If people aren't familiar, where can they find you on the internet? Where they watch your stream and your YouTube channel? Where's all that at?
Very conveniently, it's all Slackanater. It's Slackanater. It's Slackanater at YouTube, on Twitch, on Twitter, Instagram, which I don't do any of the social media stuff, but I have them.
I know. But
yeah, if you go, I even did it. I have a TikTok account, Slackanater on TikTok.
Fancy.
But yeah, it's all luckily that name was open everywhere, so Facebook, all that stuff. If you type in Slackanater, you're gonna find it.
I almost forgot to ask, is there an origin story to the screen name?
So one of the things that I've been known for my entire life is I try so many things. My motto has always been, you can try anything once. So ironically, I've always been slacking off. It's not because I actually do. It's more because what's he doing now? He's walking the Appalachian Trail. He's keeping bees. He is a woodworker. He's has a garden. We did a little homestead thing. I'm always trying something new. And that kind of, even throughout high school, that was my thing. I learned to do card tricks. I've been a competitive juggler. There's just always something going on. And then in high school, I used to do a really terrible impression of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, basically, I would just be like, oh, like I would yell, and it was terrible. But they got mashed together. So we had slacking and Arnold Schwarzenegger, or the Terminator Slackanator. It's kind of where it came from. But it was a handle back in high school, and I've kept it ever since.
Still got it today. That's pretty good. Not everyone can say that. So
that's cool. True. And I've never had to add numbers to it. So right. I kept it because I found it. It's like I didn't ever have to be Slackanator 3842 or whatever. It's always been available, and that makes the social medias and stuff easy. Right. You search it, you'll find it.
That's impressive. Not everyone has that story, nor can they claim that. Quite often, you got to be 0678532, end there.
Or they changed it once and had to change it back, and then they moved to something else, and
right.
Yeah,
the whole thing.
I'm sticking with it. I got it, and it's just turned into Slack now. It's just what everyone uses.
Well, now, and we all know it. We're Slackanator is recognized now, so this is awesome. This is great. Well, thanks again for geeking out. Yeah, you can have on some Zelda and Jock and Challenge runs. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks so much, and really appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, it was a blast, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. If you're enjoying the podcast, please feel free, subscribe, leave a comment, all that stuff people say at the end of a video. It honestly all goes a long way to help the podcast. Thank you so much. If you want to join us on Discord, we chat mostly about food, but occasionally we do talk about the stuff that's in the podcast. The link is in the show notes or in the description. Feel free. Come on by. Join us. If you want to follow on Twitter, Sequence Break PC. Sequence Break PC. I post when I go live. It's kind of not at a set time, so if you want to see the live feed of the podcast, feel free, follow there. And finally, if you want to email, podcast@sequencebreakpodcast.com. Sequencebreakpodcast.com is also where you can find the backlog of all of the episodes. It's also on YouTube as well, so feel free, join in, have some fun. Thank you so much. I will see ya in the next one.